Silly Times by Dimondium. It was a bright afternoon, and many ponies of Ponyville felt carefree. There wasn't a single worry on their minds, and there probably wouldn't be any time in the immediate future. Every pony was worry-free, except for Rainbow Dash. The Cyan Pegasus stood before the door to Sugar Cube Corner, nervously tugging an invisible collar around her neck. The weight of anxiety pressed down upon her with such a weight, yet the thought of informing the pink mare of her decision hurt even more. However, she had already knocked. There was no going back without looking like a mischievous colt who had decided to play ding-dong ditch. In only a second, the door flung open to reveal a jubilant Pinkie Pie.
Dashie, you're here! Oh my gosh, this is gonna be so great!
He said, hardly pausing even for a second to breathe.
Come on in, let's get ready!
The Pegasus sighed, trotting into the bakery, taking little note of the pink pony's excessive ramblings. Instead, she focused on the surroundings, which were rather festive indeed. Streamers hung from the walls, balloons were tied down at set locations all over the place. All in all, it screamed party, but Rainbow Dash wasn't feeling it.
And then it'll be a happy ending for every pony, and...
Rainbow interrupted Pinkie, blurting out what she'd wished she didn't have to say, but did.
Pinkie, I can't do this.
In an instant, Pinkie's cheerful monologue died down to a concerned frown.
But you promised, Dashie.
Young Flyer shook her head, taking a sudden interest in the floor tiles. It was enough that she had to deal with the mere concept, but now she had to break Pinkie's heart?
It's just wrong.
Pink Earth Pony's voice carried much of the heartbreak that Rainbow had feared it might have.
What? Why? Just look at this place.
Dash shouted, suddenly shifting her glance up and waving her hooves around frantically.
It's a party for something that doesn't need it. You don't need a party to announce that you and your best friend suddenly fell in love. Not to mention that you're a different orientation than the rest of town. Okay? Just know.
Her words, while spoken of reflexive spite, carried some truth to themselves regardless. A single banner that draped itself across the far wall read, quite simply, Happy Joint Coming Out Day. The rainbow maned pony sighed, allowing her gaze to drop back down, wincing slightly as the reality of it hit her hard.
Listen, I really appreciate that you're happy, and that you will be willing to do this, but I'm just...
She shook her head, hardly believing the messages she was conveying herself.
I'm scared, okay? I don't want anything to go bad, and I can tell it will.
The tears which had been gathering at the corner of Pinkie's eyes slowly receded, as she heard the confession from her friend.
You're afraid?
Words tumbled from her mouth, but uncertainly, as if a foreigner was trying to speak equestrian for the first time.
But what's there to be afraid of? It's nothing but happy news, and it isn't.
Pegasus sighed, logging onto the party pony's gaze with a wavering worried look of her own.
I know how ponies can be, and they don't like it when two mares just happen to, you know.
She trailed off into her indeterminate mumbling for a second.
Love each other. But there's no buts about it, Pinkie,
said Rainbow, turning and heavily plopping herself onto the ground on the opposite side of the baker.
I'm not doing it. I'm sorry.
The silence hung for a few seconds, more foreboding than the presence of Cerberus itself. Pegasus could feel the weight of an anvil trying to crush her heart. She held back the pain the best she could. Nothing, however, could stop the single tear that slid down her cheek. Pinkie herself frowned, very, very deeply.
What did I do? This whole day is just kablooey, and all because...
Pink Mare had to haul in a squeal of joy at her sudden realization. She smiled soon after the event, albeit a little warily. Without a word, she trotted forward before wrapping her forehoofs around the dejected Pegasus' neck, gently squeezing her tighter in a hug.
I love you, Dashie.
Rainbow managed to cast a eye roll before she cut back to the floor again.
It's not going to work, Pinkie. No, I love you, Dashie.
Pinkie repeated, emphasizing the word with a light squeeze to her grip.
I love you because you're you. You decided to tell me how you felt, and that takes a lot of courage, you know? I love you because you aren't afraid of anything, or what any pony thinks of you.
Rainbow sniffled slightly, before tilting her head back to meet Pinkie Pie's swaying visage, which was now adorned with a slowly growing smile.
I love you because you're Rainbow Dash. You always stick up for me and your friends, through stupid, silly, and stupidly silly times. This is just another silly time, Dashy.
Pink Earth Pony finished her monologue in one of the simplest motions, closing her eyes and burying her nose into the Cyan's mare's shoulder, not allowing her smile to ever dissipate.
And I'd love it if you were here to go through it with me.
Rainbow Dash didn't respond verbally, but instead hesitated for a few seconds before smiling and simply reaching one of her own hooves up to meet one of Pinkie's own, which were still wrapped tightly around her midsection area. The hug was broken eventually on the pretense of allowing Rainbow to pick herself up. Upon doing so, her gaze drifted to the side for about the umpteenth time in about a simple minute.
Listen, I'm sorry I got that way. I don't know what got into me. And I hope I can make it up to you.
Dash found herself interrupted by one of the softest pair of lips she had ever tasted, followed by the light exploration of her mouth commenced by a certain pink pony's tongue. She stood, completely caught off guard, before finally relaxing into the kiss with a feeling that could only be described as melting. However, unfortunately for Dash, the encounter was to end just as quickly as it had started. Pinkie pulled back, smiling ever brightly once more.
There's more where that came from if you...
A knock on the door interrupted her playful teasing, followed by a voice drifting through the woodwork.
Pinkie Pie, you said something about a party?
Pink Mare giggled, eyeing the Pegasus wordlessly for one last second before bounding to the door, Rainbow following shortly in tow. Her step was still a reluctant one, but much less as she'd begun. After all, if she were determined to get through this for any reason, it would definitely have been for the promise of more pepperminty sweet kisses. And she could have all that she wanted as long as she simply told the waiting guests one thing. The truth that had been waiting to have sprung. But it definitely seemed worth it to her. As mentioned before, kisses, cuddling, cupcakes, and just hugs were enough motivation. Whereas if she hadn't happened to blurt something out of great importance, such notions would bring up "you savvy" for her. What was this truth, and the very core of her anxiety? That she loved Pinkie Pie with all of her being, and she would never, ever let go. As the door closed and the last pony exited the building, the pink mare smiled, turning to her Pegasine companion.
See? That wasn't so bad.
Rainbow sighed before rolling her eyes in defeat.
Alright. Maybe I did overreact a little bit.
Pinkie only giggled before gently booping the cyan mare on the nose.
Come on. What have you learned?
The Pegasus raised a hoof, ready to proclaim absolutely nothing, but she lowered it again, seemingly thinking otherwise.
That you should never assume anything about any pony. And being just who you are is just doing what you normally do without fear?
The pink pony nodded before burying the edge of her muzzle into the crook of Rainbow's neck.
There we go. We'd better write a letter soon, huh?
Rainbow Dash chuckled, nodding in agreement.
Right you are.
She paused before taking a hesitant step towards the door, where the party guests had left not long ago.
Well, I really hate to be, but I've got to get going. I gotta meet Cloud Kicker so we can break up this huge storm headed our way from the Everfree. Alright, Dashy.
It was only when the rainbow maned pony was halfway out the door, drinking in the warm sunlight, that she felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned, raising an eyebrow.
Yeah?
Well, a second time in one evening, Rainbow found herself suddenly locked in one of the party pony's spontaneous kisses. It was sweet, loving, and, after the day's proceedings, it filled her with a warmth that slowly drove the anxieties, concerns, fears and doubts of the past out of her mind for good. Pinkie always knew how to cheer her up, and when necessary, restore her nearly infallible courage, and she did so with just that one kiss. Rainbow managed to pull away from the pink pony's affections, but did not manage to suppress a smile of epic proportion from breaking out into her features. He grabbed the fuchsia mane, pulling her into a hug with as much might as she could muster. The party pony returned the favor. The two young mares spent an indeterminate amount of time in the embrace, each closing their eyes and savoring the other's scent and their closeness.
Does she?
Rainbow Dash could hardly find it in herself to reply while in the grip of Pinkie. It would have been too easy to lose herself in the pink, loving mess of her mare friend.
Yeah, I love you.
Dash smiled even wider, and her heart burst with happiness.
I know, Pinkie. I know.
The end.